Hello, everyone. Welcome to our 65th episode of Human Needs at Work, where we discuss various topics about well being, health, and how we can make workplaces a little bit more human and more sustainable. And today, I would like to dive in deeper into a topic of nature and specifically the impact of nature on our health and well being. Well, I really believe that a lot of health issues, both physical and mental illnesses, are actually created by the fact that the way we live and the way we work are just so far away from how we have actually evolved to thrive and survive as human beings over millions of years. So I would like us to kind of take us back a little bit more on the journey of how we are supposed to be living. And when we are in touch with nature and with our environment, what is the impact of that on our health, on our well-being, and how we can really either bring back some of those elements into our lives, but also where it's not possible, how can we actually simulate some of that environment in a way that it would still translate to our improved health and well-being, and specifically looking in a work context. So hello to those who are joining us. Please do say hello. Feel free to ask me any questions. I'll do my best to answer them as much as possible as we go. And also, I will share some links to resources and research for more reading for you later in a chat. Okay, so where do we even start? I think the big problem with our health and illness really is the fact that we've lost touch with nature. And when I say we lost touch with nature, there is obviously the metaphoric aspect of it, right? The way we are disconnected from kind of the values and the ideals and the natural cycles of the earth, and not really being in touch with how the ecosystem of the environment operates. And in a way, as a result, living very unsustainably, and the way we create our economy can be very, very damaging to our environment. But also, we are losing touch with Earth in a very physical way, right? And when we think about this, human beings are actually electromagnetic. And we are made out of all of the molecules that are electric, that exchange all of the signals all the time. And Earth has its own electromagnetic field, which is negatively charged. And by having physical contact with the Earth, we're actually allowing ourselves to rebalance some of those energy fields, and this really happens all the way at the cellular level. So what happens here is that this negative field helps us to absorb free radicals in our cells. So this is actually a detoxification process that is happening when we are allowing ourselves to engage with that electromagnetic field. Now, we know that the toxins that we have, the foods that we eat, the lack of touch with nature creates a lot of inflammation in the body. And inflammation is classed as one of the, not one, but the biggest cause of death and illness. And of course, people don't just die from inflammation, they die from cardiovascular diseases, from cancers, a lot of other different illnesses and disorders that are created as a consequence of chronic inflammation in our body. So being physically in touch with the earth, with the environment, with nature, can really have huge benefits on our health and well-being from this kind of electromagnetic rebalance point of view. So what can we do? Well, what I do personally, I walk barefoot every morning. When I walk the dog in the morning, doesn't matter what's the weather. I walk barefoot, and that's my little aspect of being in touch with nature. Um, but also things like swimming in natural waters. I know it's not always possible, and not everyone can choose to do this during the winter, but it's incredibly healthy way of rebalancing your body, because water has much higher electric conductivity than other materials like wood and so on. um, we can also, if it's not possible to walk barefoot, we can also have footwear that is made out of natural conductive materials. So that could be, there could be materials that are made out of leather, that could be made out of, natural kind of like wood, cork materials. They are all very healthy for our body. But also there are, of course, as always, there are some technological innovations that can help us to do this as well. And you have earthing bed sheets that allow you to actually connect with this electromagnetic field at night when you sleep. So I haven't personally tried that myself. If anybody has tried that, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts and feedback. But there has been a lot of research done, and it shows the reduction in stress, the reduction in inflammation, the increase in heart rate variability. So there are a lot of positive research showing from using this technology as well, if access to nature is not possible for us. Okay, so that's kind of more of a physical touch with nature. Now, there are a lot of other aspects that have positive impact on our health and well-being beyond just that physical um, touch. Um, some of it is to do with with light, with sound, with color that we are exposed to. So for example, green color, research shows that it has the most positive, the most soothing effect on our nervous system. And this is probably because for millions of years we've spent time in these natural green, lush environments. And this is what is familiar to our body. It feels like home when we are in a forest, right? In a way, it really, and again, if you think, what feeling we have when you are watching the sunset, when you're sitting on the beach, when you are, sat on the shore of the lake and just, listening the birds chirping. It's really has this kind of very primal, very kind of deep rooted calming effect on our nervous system, because that's what's been familiar to us for millions of years through human evolution. So definitely think about green color in your decor. Let's look at having um, plants in our environment. I always try to make sure that I have plants in every room. And also in working environment where it's not possible, we can really think of simulating that with some wallpaper that replicates the forest, or some other natural landscapes that are much more kind of closely linked to that natural view, if the real one is not possible and not accessible to us. The other important aspect of that is light. Now, we know nowadays there's a lot of new research about sleep, about our circadian rhythms, and we know that light and darkness has huge impact on rebalancing our circadian clock. And circadian clock it's so much more than something that just influences your sleep. Circadian rhythm actually balances a lot of metabolic processes in your body. So your digestion, your energy metabolism, a lot of healing and recovery process. So during our 24-hour clock, our body goes through these stages where specific systems and organs in our body take turn in activating and working to their best potential, and then also at some other times resting, just to balance that body energy. If we don't have our circadian clock synced up in a way with some of those processes, we can really cause a lot of we can create a lot of physical illnesses in our body as a result. Apologies, I think someone's at the door. My dog is going mad if you hear that. So light exposure first thing in the morning is the most important to kind of entrain our circadian clock, and also having light modulation during the day. So we want to replicate the environment that is as close as possible to outdoors. So even if you see in my room, I actually have quite bright lights. So probably on a camera, it looks like I'm in some sort of sunny room and have have a sun shining. Where actually I have a light that is set in a way that is actually shining onto the ceiling, and then it projects the light across the room. So actually, maybe I can show you that. Let me see. Yeah. So you can probably don't know if you can see it properly on a camera, but essentially little tricks like that can really help simulate how the light in our environment surrounds us, rather than just having one light bulb which from the middle of the room, which then means that it casts a lot of shadows and it doesn't really have the same impact on our exposure to light. So, of course, we want to spend as much time as possible outdoors, especially as soon as we wake up, especially the first half of the day. But of course, when we do spend time indoors, we really want to have as much of light exposure during the daytime, and then have the minimum of it in the evening when it's dark. So then you don't want to have this kind of light. You really want to have very dim, very kind of orangey red lights to reduce blue light exposure. And in the evening, we really want to have that natural darkness as much as possible. And also proximity to some of the technology that we're using. If you're, let's say, watching the TV from the distance, is actually less damaging than looking at the screen of the phone, because it emits completely different light. So yeah, it is so important to have that light exposure during the day. And when we think in a working environment, how our meeting rooms look like. Most of the time they are, piece of a little dungeon, right? With no windows, with no natural light, to make sure that, we are having the best view of our presentation screen and so on. But this is really the worst environment to be in during the day. And it's creating a lot of damage to our health, because it really tricks our circadian clock into these different states where now body is confused about, what time of the day is. Now, we don't actually see the light only through the eyes. We have sensors in our skin, in all our body, that light penetrates. And infrared light especially, it has a healing effect on our body, on our muscles, on our bones, on our brain even. So there's a lot of research showing that it affects even cognitive performance in what are specific neurobiological mechanisms that are unknown. Yet there are some speculations, but there is proof that light and sunshine stimulates your brain directly, not just through your eyes. And the light can repair our metabolic process in a body. It can help to repair cells. It can repair mitochondria. So mitochondria is energy producing cells in our body. And very interesting fact that mitochondria actually has some non-human DNA, which actually means that mitochondria, billions of years ago, when the world was full of this kind of cellular organisms, um, mitochondria was its own organism, and at some point our bodies have developed, as we've evolved, we've developed this symbiotic relationship with it and integrated mitochondria into our bodies. So it is very, very interesting that energy production is actually coming from this mitochondria cell. And it is crucial to have exposure to light and to the right energy for mitochondria to do its work correctly, and therefore for us to have the right level of energy metabolism and the right amount of energy for ourselves, right? Yeah, so it's so important that we try to have as much natural light as possible, work with inner rooms and offices that have windows, spend some time outdoors, make sure that you take breaks and you get yourself out of the room regardless of the weather. Just having that exposure to natural light is very useful, but also having exposure to infrared light as well, so you can have some infrared light saunas and so on. And obviously that light is already present in sunlight naturally. But if we have a shortage of that, having some infrared light exposure can be really, really useful for us. Yeah, what else haven't I mentioned? Sound. Again, I think for millions of years we've used to hearing these natural soundscapes and the birds and the sea and the wind, and again that has really soothing, calming effect on our nervous system. And also things like bird singing is actually a signal of safety, because if birds are singing, that means it's all calm, there's no storms coming, and it's naturally interpreted by our body as everything is okay. So it's important as well that when we are walking outside, the periphery vision and the view that we have is also de-stressing our nervous system, because when we are stressed, our vision becomes very narrow and focused on specific object, obstacle, and so on. We are really very narrowly focusing on whatever threat is right in front of us. But the moment we open our vision and we have this kind of like horizon view, and it forces us, like looking at the horizon forces us to have that wide view of that line. So it's really, really healthy to be looking at the horizon and to be in a spaces that allows us to have this kind of far reaching view, because it switches off our sympathetic nervous system. So the nervous system that is kind of stress system, fight flight system, and it allows us to switch on more of this parasympathetic response, which is more of a relaxed and rejuvenate and repair the body. So the more we spend outside, the more we are engaging with that periphery vision. Also, even things like EMDR, eye movement integration techniques that are being used in therapy have actually been created by observing how people's eyes move when they walk in nature. And that eye movement also helps to access different areas of our brain, integrate our memories, thoughts. So no wonder that, when we are walking, we often coming up with, different ideas, and we can be much more creative, and we can solve some problems that, we were really stuck when we were like really, really focusing on it. And the moment we're out, we start walking, we let go, and then all of those solutions and ideas come to us. So it is very, very healthy from kind of cognitive performance point of view to be outside, to be looking at this kind of wide periphery vision. And it's so important to take breaks and actually create time to, even look through the window look in the distance, look at this, far away and kind of wide depth of the view that we can create. So yeah, let's try to do that as much as possible, and invite yourselves to take those breaks, and really, instead of focusing on the narrow screen and just like really looking here and now, really switching off and having that wide periphery vision. Yeah, and finally, other things that can be useful to mention, actually, the actual physical touch and texture. Now, when we are engaging with our hands in, exploring different surfaces, so, let's say, I have this shell here that has all sorts of different, edges and cracks and so on. Just by allowing my hands to feel that, I am stimulating my nervous system in a way, right? I'm engaging with environment. I'm exploring it. Now that has a very different feel to, the smooth stone. And allowing ourselves to explore this really trains our connection between our brain and body, and the so-called sensory acuity, where we can feel the environment, when we engage with the environment, when we can really navigate our hands and really be better with our hands, with what we do. Now, why is this important? Because this mind-body balance and the sensory acuity is actually a crucial part of emotional self-regulation. If we cannot physically be in control of our physical body, it is most likely that we are also not in control of our emotions. So people who are struggling with emotional difficulties, you will see that they will also most likely be quite clumsy. And this is because this physical balance goes hand in hand with emotional balance, and we can actually train our emotional self-regulation by training our physical body balance and building the sensory acuity. So physical engagement with environment, touching the world physically, is really, really helpful for us from that aspect. And very interestingly now, so I work with a lot of people who experience past traumas. And in very, very extreme scenarios, if people close their eyes and you put an object into their hands, people cannot tell what that object is. Even if they're feeling it, if they're manipulating it, they cannot tell what that object is without looking at it. And that's the extreme end of completely being kind of disconnected from the sensory acuity and the being able to kind of navigate the world around us. Because with trauma, very often we kind of disconnect from the body to that extreme. So obviously that's very extreme scenario, but just to kind of illustrate that it is possible, and it happens in extreme trauma, people with a history of trauma. The other aspect there is that when we engage with natural environment, so when we touch, the grass, the leaves, trees, plants, flowers, whatever that might be, animals, pets, we are actually enriching our microbiome. And our microbiome, again, this is kind of the additional thing to our human genome that has its own intelligence. It has its own way of helping us to build our own immune system, regulate our even behaviors and cravings and so on. It has a huge, huge impact on our neurobiological and hormonal processes in our body and secretion of specific hormones. And therefore, by engaging with real environment, we are enriching that environment of that microbiome. So we are feeding that microbiome in a way and enriching it with different microbiota. And things like gardening, for example, people who do gardening, they have much, much healthier microbiome, and they usually have less gut health issues, because skin microbiome, gut microbiome, it is linked in many ways. And again, finally, just kind of like exploring the environment and, playing with different objects. It's really, really rewarding. Think, for example, why we have such a big success with Lego, right? Because it actually replicates the same process of us exploring with our environment, and this tactical touch and building something new out of things that we find or buy in this case. But it's really, really healthy to be engaging in these kind of like tactile activities. So yeah, we can bring Legos to our office. Yes, we can all be kids and allow ourselves to play, and also play with environment, play with natural objects. Really have some of the things that we can play with literally, and touch the nature from physical point of view, but also kind of more of a metaphoric, spiritual kind of being in touch with nature, with living in sync with environment, with needs and cycles of the seasons, of the light, of the darkness, and yeah, I mean, what else can we add? I think this is probably a good moment to stop and maybe go outdoors. So if you have any other questions, please do let me know. I'll try to share some research papers and some more resources for you in a chat, if you'd like some more information about what I've mentioned. And I think this gives a lot of information to those who are actually designing working environments and physical spaces, to see how we can incorporate these aspects of nature into our working environment, so it has that improvement in our health and well-being. So thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next week. Have a good day.